All right, what's up, guys? Today I'm going to be sharing with you why I believe romantic love does not exist. And I'm a little hesitant to say why I believe, because not only do I believe, but I know it does not exist. And see, the problem with opinions is, and I believe is an opinion. You can base it off of fact, but when you say I believe, you're implying that there's an opinion. And the problem with an opinion is that there's inevitably going to be subjectivity in that opinion, okay? So, but when you say you know, it generally means that the knowledge you have is based in objectivity. And I try to be as objective as possible with you guys, using facts to draw conclusions and using ration and reason to draw conclusions. But nevertheless, in any opinion, when I'm putting forth my opinion, there is going to be some sort of subjectivity. So that's just a sort of heads up for you guys. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you guys my opinion on this, but I don't want you guys to take it in a way that shapes your opinion, but in a way that challenges your current opinion, right? I don't want to build a cult, if you will. I want to just challenge what you guys already believe. So without further ado, why I believe romantic love does not exist. My definition of romantic love is based on my recollection of past experiences in which the concept of love was described to me by other people. And basically what I've gotten from them is that romantic love is sort of an unconditional countenance, loyalty, and affection towards another person. But in that, I'll venture to say that today's definition of love is actually a term used to express one's primitive attraction to another person's superficial traits in a way that is in congruence with society's quasi-condemnation of all things superficial. When women quote unquote love, I believe there's a variety of things that are going on in their mind. Women are, if you will, a variable in an equation of which the desired outcome or sum is perceived happiness. And in mathematical addition, you find the missing variable in an equation by subtracting the given variable from the given sum. Such as to say that if women represent 1 and perceived happiness represents, say, 3, calculating 3 minus 1 would give you the missing variable so that you can add 2, which is the missing variable, with women, which represent 1, and get 3, which is perceived happiness in this instance. And so, in essence, naturally, women have a goal, and it's to complete that equation. And from the completion of that equation, they get perceived happiness. Now, that equation is women plus X variable, X being the value or the variable we must solve the equation for, equals perceived happiness. And it's my opinion that men in 2017 are finding out more and more each day that the missing variable X is money. And biologically so. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that women have an innate attraction to money. Money is simply the physical essence through which we manifest our Darwinian nature as it pertains to society. Money itself is variable. It's a proxy that's indicative of certain characteristics within a context of survival in today's day and age, right? So money is indicative of its possessor's ability to provide and protect. It's not necessarily indicative of its possessor's willingness to provide and protect. So when women seek money, they're not necessarily seeking the man for the money. Or matter of fact, they are seeking the man for the money, but they're not seeking the man for himself. Because when you seek out money alone, money inherently has an ability to provide and protect. However, if you seek out money attached to a man, then you have to deal with the man's willingness to provide and protect. And that becomes an obstacle if she's not particularly turned on by the man. So say she doesn't have any feelings of attraction towards the man. It becomes an obstacle getting the money out of him. He's seen as a problem. So women really don't want men at all. They want what men have to offer, and they see men's feelings, men in their personal being as an obstacle that blocks them from getting what men have to offer. And this means that for the women who lack the intellectual depth and worldly understanding to realize the unavailing, unfulfilling nature of the pursuit and eventual attainment of money, they'll continue to deprive themselves of true happiness in pursuit of a perceived happiness that's defined by their biological composition, which, being static in nature, will never adapt to the varying norms of society. And so, consequently, they'll never find that true happiness. And so we start to see that the missing variable in women's equation for happiness is money, not men. And this is important because a lot of men will beat themselves up when they realize that their relationship has failed, and they'll think that it was due to their own doing and not women's just inherent nature. See, if men were the culprit, right? If men were the X in the equation, if men were the missing variable, then removing them from the equation would compromise the validity of the mathematical sort of statement, right? For an example, 1 plus 2 doesn't equal 3 if you remove the 2. So if women plus men equaled happiness, then you couldn't remove men and still get happiness. However, when you remove men, women seem to be happy. They seem to be happy so long as money is still in the equation. And so as we see, with 2 out of 3 marriages failing and anywhere from 78 to 88% of divorces being initiated by women, that men really aren't the missing variable in that equation. It's money. And biologically so, right? Because money is a more renowned symbol of provision and protection than a man is in today's society. And so if romantic love is supposed to be an unconditional countenance, loyalty and affection between a man and a woman, however, the only quote unquote love to be had protrudes from a woman to money, then by the very nature of this circumstance, romantic love does not and cannot exist. And the only love that does exist, according to the Oxford Dictionary's definition of the word, which is, and I quote, a strong feeling of affection, the only true love to be had is a woman's love for money, which by its very nature cannot be romantic because money is inanimate and cannot reciprocate love. And so women, quite ironically, find that despite their pursuit, even if they attain money, despite them attaining that money, they still don't feel loved and they remain unhappy. See, because there's 2 parts to money being a provider and a protector. Money inherently has the ability to provide and protect. I believe I said this earlier, but it can only do so under the control of its possessor, which is predicated on the possessor's willingness to provide and protect. So women don't want men. In the eyes of women, men are simply a means of getting money. They're simply a means of getting provision and protection. And so the women never pursue the man for who he is. They pursue him for what he is. And that's a vehicle for the transference of money into her hand. And then they wind up getting exactly that ultimately, right? They get what he is to them, which is money and the ability the ability to provide, but not necessarily the willingness. So put it like this, right? Say I have the world's fastest running back, and he's proven his ability to run fast, but if he's not willing to do so to the fullest extent of his capabilities, is he not just an average running back at that point? If he's not willing to perform, then what use do I have for him? And so when money is attached to men in the eyes of women, They see the functionality the functionality of that money, the true functionality of that money, which is to provide and protect, only being able to come to fruition if the man is willing to pay up, if the man is willing to provide and protect. So if you can imagine from their minds, why would I need the man in the picture at all? If I control the money, of course, I'm willing to provide and protect for myself. I don't have to worry about pleasing the man so that he becomes willing to make provisions for me and protect me. And so you'll start to see, once you realize that women will continue to chase money. It's in their benefit to. It's not romantic love. When she says she loves you, she's not saying that she loves you. She's saying she loves the fact that you give her what she loves. It's not you she loves. It's your ability to bring her closer to her true love, which, if we had to put it in terms of a man, is Benjamin Franklin. But that brings me to another point. Women know no loyalty to creed, family, country, race, religion, friends, and men. The only thing they owe and know loyalty to is the qualities of provision and protection which lie in money. Women know no loyalty to anything other than money. I mean, think about it. How many times do you turn on a television and see these blonde bimbos with these low down sort of athletes that don't have a valuable education and were raised in poverty? They were raised sort of under their social class, and they're with them simply because they have money. They're with these rappers, these thugs, because they have money. And that's just an example of race, but there's so many other examples, right? There's religion. How many times have you seen the corn-fed, Christian-raised, I don't know, small-town girl end up dating and eventually marrying, the rock star, the atheist rock star who tours the world and lives in a lavish mansion? How many times have we seen women ruin marriages over money, and even ruin marriages with men who had money just in pursuit of more money? And I know that you'll say there are plenty of women that don't do these things, but let me address that, right? It's not that they don't have the desire. It's not that these women don't have the desire to get with men who have more money. It's that they often can't. That option isn't available to a lot of them. See, there's a saying that goes, you're only as faithful as your options. Women are limited to the quantity and quality of men that reflect their own attractive quality. A woman who isn't physically attractive, she's not going to have many options at her disposal. It's just not going to happen. And of course, she'll assert that, the reason for that is that she isn't shallow and she doesn't ruthlessly pursue money. Because she knows, though, that her attractiveness doesn't grant her the ability to do so. Men with money simply don't bother with her. She doesn't get attention from these high-level, high-quality males, if you will. But if you also notice this, at every place in society where there's an abundance of money, there's an abundance of physically attractive women to go along, right? I mean, think about it. But likewise, though, where there's a dearth of money, there's a dearth of attractive women. And I mean, of course, there are exceptions to the rule, right? I mean, there's exceptions to any rule, but that doesn't change the fact that the rule still stands. I mean, look at the women working at the local gas station compared to the women working in banks. Look at the women working at Walmart compared to the women working in, say, real estate. Look at the women working at the post office compared to the women working in hospitals. Look at the women living in a place like Baltimore or a place like Inwood, West Virginia, versus the women living in, Malibu or Calabasas, California. And the thing is, even if there are attractive women in these places where there isn't a lot of money, it's generally because these women are temporarily there because of college or something like that. Have you ever noticed that? Like, for example, like Starbucks or some retail store. They're not there long term. They're there in another place of money, such as a college or a university, to get more money and to bring themselves closer to money, closer to filling in that X variable of money, which gives them perceived happiness. And so women have an attraction to money that, in the fullness of its fervor, disallows women from truly being in love. Excuse me. I do that every video now, right? But in essence, the idea of romantic love and the very nature of women, the two are mutually exclusive. They can't exist together. Women will always be off kilter as it pertains to, romantic, the idea of romantic love, because their only true love is money. And as I've said before, money is inanimate and it can't reciprocate love. Such as to say that the real attraction is to what the money provides, which is, as previously stated, a provision and protection for the female. So if her attraction is to money because it protects and provides for her, then is her love not, by the definition of the word selfish, selfish? And how can it be real love? It can't be. See, whenever you can explain a correlation in human behavior, like across a wide range of people, it's because that behavior is generally derived from some very controlled or very definite source. For humans, it's biology. And so considering love is supposed to be this abstract, complex concept wrought by a concoction of different variables, how can it be so that it can be explained by something as definite and relatively invariable as biology? And my explanation for this, if you will, is because love is not an emotion, it's a concept. An emotion is really just an impulsive urge triggered by any given stimuli. Emotions are adjectives, and adjectives describe and modify nouns. Love is a noun, and a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea, and love falls under the category of ideas. Ideas are just building blocks of concepts, and concepts are intangible manifestations of human thought and thus human consciousness. So emotions require no thought. They're simply knee-jerk psychological responses, if you will. So the notion that romantic love in particular is just some natural emotion felt between two quote unquote soulmates is a massive absurdity. And so I think the natural question to ask next is, where does this put relationships regarding romantic love between men and women? And if you ask me, I'd say that, these relationships are non-existent and have never really existed. Even in the older displays of romantic love with reference to the 1920s through the 1940s, romantic love wasn't necessarily more vital than it is today. It's just that there were more practical components of marriage in those times that weren't as eroded away as they are today. Such things as gender roles that complemented each other made men and women more dependent on each other. Men couldn't raise a family without the nurturing and homemaking of women, and opposite men, women couldn't survive and raise a family without the provision and protection of men. So naturally each sex sort of filled in where the other one couldn't, making a relatively strong marriage or union that could withstand certain pressures from certain things like personality and interest conflicts that tear at the seams of relationships today. And so romantic love, in all of its weakness and non-existence, if you will, was always able to hide behind the effectiveness of the gender roles that existed in society, and sort of appropriate the identity of these gender roles. So in effect, many people thought that love was the reason for fidelity when it really wasn't. They didn't think it was the sheer practicality that was offered through marriage due to gender roles, right? And now that those gender roles have eroded, the erroneous notion of this romantic love is left to prove just how effective it truly is at fostering the same fidelity. And we're beginning to see that for the most part, it's failing to do so, right? It's somewhat been a travesty of all things genuine, and a complete falsity of sorts. When anything weak, which normally hides behind something strong, is forced to prove its strength, you begin to see just how weak it truly is. Such as to say that I don't think relationships between men and women will ever really repair themselves unless gender roles and or are sort of reinstated at the behest of the general population. But even then, the likelihood of this happening isn't really high at all. We're so far up the creek without a paddle that the only real thing to do is hold on for dear life and brace for the waterfall ahead. Women have begun to equate the traditional role of women with this misogyny and sexism, the complements of feminism. And they've in turn traded, such roles for more modern masculine roles, of which, they mostly deem a fundamental human right. So if you could imagine how difficult it would be to retract something that is seen by many as now a right and subsequently assert that they should adopt seemingly inhumane roles, of which will be indefinitely customary, it wouldn't fare well with most people. It wouldn't fare well with them at all. When something becomes labeled as a right, it becomes something that you can freely give, but can't freely take away. And the problem is today, what doesn't work has been labeled a right. So if you can imagine, you'll have a hard time taking away what doesn't work. In parallel to physics, I would say that just as objects in motion tend to stay in motion, objects in decline tend to stay in decline, at least until they've hit a rock bottom. I'm no prophet or anything, and I'm certainly no fortune teller, so I can't really give any helpful insight into exactly how the situation between men and women will transpire in the future. But I can say that in my past circumstances and looking at past circumstances, that entropy doesn't have a tendency to reverse itself. So almost certainly the future of relationships will be rather uncongenial and torrid going forward. But who knows? Try to remain open-minded. Maybe things will rebound once they hit, sort of a low plateau. And they may not, though. But in life, I can tell you that, things, events, circumstances, they tend to be cyclical in nature. And so I can definitely see the return of the past, or at least a modified version of it. Just like fashion trends, pop culture, and lifestyles tend to make reentries into the collective consciousness of society after, sort of a prolonged period of dormancy, if you will. So I think that will definitely be interesting to see. Although I don't really think there's going to be any change in our situation anytime soon. For now, though, I can say it would behoove you as a man and men in general, really, MGTOW men watching this right now, to stay out of relationships with women. And I know there's going to be at least one smartass in the comment section, who's implying that I should, that I'm encouraging men to get in relationships with other men. I'm not doing that at all. But, if that's the way you swing, so be it, to each his own. But I think the MGTOW movement has done a phenomenal job at sort of driving home the fact that women don't love men. And you may be wondering what business I have, in judging the relationships of someone else when I'm not in their relationship personally. But just as a doctor, right, can diagnose and treat cancer without having had cancer due to his or her knowledge of cancer, I can do the same with relationships. And I can say with the utmost assurance, guys, that women are the masters of deception, as their survival, being the physically weaker vessel, is based on manipulating other more physically adept people for the sake of their own, survival and prosperity. So it will never seem as though she's just using you for your money. I mean, if you're waiting for some grandiose announcement, from her that she's using you for your money, you're being foolish. It's something you have to know. And although you can't tell what what her specific desires are as a personality, biology, I've told you, but more importantly, you can just go and look up any on Google Scholar or something like that, any biological study. Biology will tell you exactly what her specific desires are as a female human being. And from that, you'll begin to realize that all of her personal desires, all of her wants, all of the things she claims she wants, all of her desires as a human being, as a woman, they encompass her main biological desires. And those desires are provision and protection. And that is only in this day and age, in the society we've set up, that can only be attained through the attainment of money. Now, I do have something to address with you guys, as I've seen it occurring more and more frequently in the MGTOW movement, and it's giving the movement a really bad name, which is why I want to address it, right? We shouldn't be in the business of slandering women. Even in my most critical videos, you'll find that I keep the criticism strictly empirical, and I try to abide by the basis of fact. Allowing my actions to become derivatives of, my emotional whim is exactly what I condemn women for doing. And it's one of the reasons why men and women are in the situation that they are today in society, and especially in relationships. And it's also the reason why MGTOW is around. So it's only axiomatic that the same irrationality that provided the impetus for such a combative response to feminism will provide that same response to MGTOW. So tread lightly when you're just thrashing women. It's not for that, okay? The MGTOW movement should not be a place where betas, and I hate to use that word betas because I think it's try hard, and it just, I don't know, it's surrounded by a sense of a false bravado, if you will. But nevertheless, it shouldn't be a place where betas who've been rejected by, women their whole lives because they're socially awkward come to voice their grievances with women. It's not about that. It's a place of rationality and critical thought. So with that being said, share, comment, and subscribe on this video, guys. Subscriptions are my drug. I am heavily addicted to those subscriptions. I love the feedback you guys have been giving me. I've been able to really engage with you guys and see what's on your mind. I love that. That pretty much sums it up. Stay cool, stay awesome, and stay tuned for the next video.